Let's take a look at pre-treating now. Of course, for all of our garments that are going to have a white underbase, they need to be pre-treated first. Before we actually spray the pre-treat product onto the garments, we need to pre-press them. Now when we pre-press them, this drives the moisture out of the garment as well as helps flatten out the fibers. The first thing we want to do is make sure that our heat press is on 340 degrees, which this one is. It's up to temperature. And then we want to make sure that we have a medium to medium heavy pressure on the heat press. So I'm going to check that first, and that's not nearly enough pressure. Now I can place the garment on there. We're going to print on the back of this. I like to make sure that the collar is off the heat press when I do this. And again, not enough pressure, so we're going to adjust the pressure. Still not quite enough. Feel that one more time. And that feels pretty good. That's a nice medium to medium heavy pressure right there. Okay, so now that we're ready, we've got the heat press set up. I'm going to just put a Teflon sheet or a piece of release paper on the surface. And I'm going to press this for approximately 10 to 15 seconds. I'm then going to release the press, remove my sheet, and now we're going to take this over to our automatic pre-treat machine. We're going to open up the drawer. We're going to load the garment. Now you can load this either way. You can put the collar at this end or at the other end. You want to make sure that you tuck it in underneath so that the overspray is not going to go onto the sleeves and the sides. Push the drawer closed. You would then adjust the timer. The lower the number, the more pre-treat. The higher the number, the less pre-treat. We want to be on a dark shirt of cotton, generally between a 2 and a 3. So I'm going to go just a little below the middle. I'm just between 2 and 2.5. This is a fairly lightweight material. The heavier the material, the more it absorbs the liquid. We usually need to apply more pre-treat on a garment like that. Now I'm simply going to hit the start button. I do want to kind of watch. I want to make sure that we get a fairly even spray. Open the tray. And now we'll take it back to the heat press to dry this. Now, here it's critical to have some kind of a sheet on top of this. I didn't actually have to put a sheet on top of it. The only reason I did is because this heat press happens to be a little bit dirty, and I didn't want those fibers to get raised by sticking to the surface of the heat press. We can use two different products. We can either use a standard Teflon sheet, which is reusable for quite a long period of time. You do need to make sure that you wipe it down with some isopropyl alcohol every once in a while to take that tackiness off of there that comes from the pre-treat. It is somewhat sticky. Or we can use release paper. Release paper can be used several times. It can be used until it starts getting wrinkled. Once it starts getting very wrinkled, you want to discard it and get a new piece. The one thing you never want to use for pre-treat is we never want to use parchment paper because it's absorbent. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to place it on the surface, and we want to dry the pre-treat for between 30 and 40 seconds. I'm going to bring this down. At the end, our 30, 40 seconds. We release the heat press, and we will now take this shirt over to our printer where we can print it. Now, these shirts can be printed immediately, or they can be stored for up to a month before we actually print on them. When we do store them, we want to be very careful that we don't disturb the surface fibers. So we want to store them. Usually I would put this down. I would put a piece of release paper or parchment paper on the surface. I would now take the next one and put the pre-treat against the release paper. I would stack them up about a dozen tall, simply fold the stack in half, and then carefully place that into a box or some kind of a plastic container and store them until we're ready to use them. Let's take a look at the rest of the printing process. This is how we manually pre-treat a garment. This is our pre-treat. This is what is loaded inside the front end of our Wagner sprayer. Now, we do want to make sure that the little tube inside is pointing towards the front, and the adjustment is done with this adjustment screw here. You want to adjust it so that you're applying an amount of product that you're comfortable with, depending on how fast you want to move. Some people prefer to move very quickly across the garment, so they want it to apply more. And then other people like to go real slow. They feel they have more control that way, so you would want less product to come out. I'm going to move at more of a medium speed, so the gun is adjusted for me for that. I'm now going to take my pre-pressed shirt. I'm going to set it down up here. And when we do pre-treat, we do want to make sure that we don't stop at the edges, that we continue past. We want to make sure that we maintain an equal distance from the surface of the garment. And I like to go both horizontally and vertically when we spray it. So, we always want to prime the gun off from the garment first. Then I like to keep the motor running and apply my product. We will now take this over to our heat press and dry the pre-treat.